The leadership of General Powell helped save thousands of U.S. service members' lives and was influential force during the Vietnam War. The dedication and service of the general not only earned him the title of Lord Protector of the country, but has also made him a hero in both Hmong community and the United States of America.
During the Vietnam War, a secret war also took place in 1962 that was fought by the Laotian guerrillas and North Vietnamese communists. The leader of the Laotian guerrillas was hired by the US to fight against communism, and he was even called one of the greatest heroes in the Vietnam War by William Colby, the director of the United States CIA at the time. All his efforts were to help his people fight throughout the war and even help the refugees reach America after his failed attempt to stop communism. This man was General Vinh Pao. General Vinh Pao took a stand in the Vietnam Secret War by working with the United States and fighting against the Vietnamese, trying to keep the Laotians and Hmong free from communism, along with helping the refugees to reach America after the war had ended. A few years after the end of World War II, Vietnam was split into two sides, the North and the South. The French and Viet Minh, a group of communist and non-communist Vietnamese wanting freedom from the French, made an agreement that all communists would live up in the North and the people in the South would only be non-communist members. The South, with help from the US, formed a democratic government called the Republic of Vietnam, while the North had a communist government. The northern leaders had later disobeyed the agreement and sent an estimate of 10,000 troops down to the south, disguised as farmers, and waited for further instructions. They formed an organization called the Viet Cong and started acts of terrorism in the south. The United States made the MAAG, Military Assistance Advisory Group Vietnam, to assist the South on defending themselves from Viet Cong without much help from the US. But things took a violent turn when North Vietnamese torpedo boats took down 2 American destroyers on international waters, causing the Gulf of Tonkin incident. The United States did not want to declare war, but something needed to be done about it. On March 8, 1965, President Lyndon B. Johnson sent armed military troops to fight in the Vietnam War. But by the end of November 1967, the number of American troops in Vietnam was approaching 500,000. And U.S. casualties have reached a total of 15,000 dead and 100,000 wounded. In 1973, President Nixon withdrew all American troops from Vietnam. On June 1974, the last American plane and U.S. personnel had left Laos, but that wasn't the end. General Vinh Pao was born on December 1929 to a family of farmers up in the mountains and grew up farming the fields. During 1941, he was headed into town to the Tha Sing House, which is the town head's house, to pay the taxes that his family owed. Many people were also there paying taxes, and he saw that most were unable to pay due to the little wealth they had. At this time, he was 13 years old, and this image of the Hmong began to sink in. Vinh Pao thought to himself about the little wealth that his people had, and wanted to change the poor treatment towards his community. This had motivated him to make a change in his community and work hard to help his people. So he joined World War II as a teenage soldier to fight against the Japanese and joined a French police academy in 1952. He was the only Hmong person in the academy and was ranked 7th out of the 56 students that attended there. Vinh Pao then became the interpreter and messenger for the French and got himself a position in the Lao Gendarmerie, a paramilitary force commanded by French officers. From there, he worked his way up to sergeant major and later went to officer candidate school to become the first Hmong officer in the Laos army. Because of his great success, new routes began to open and gave the Hmong chances to advance in the military and have better futures. In 1961, General Vinh Pao was recruited by the United States Central Intelligence Agency to work for them in the Secret War. Laos, being a neighboring country to Vietnam, was at the most risk, as the Vietnamese wanted to spread its communism throughout the countries. To add on, the Ho Chi Minh Trail also entered Laos borders down south. They made a treaty which stated that if his army failed, they would be able to immigrate to America. But if they won, they could keep the land that they had fought over. General Vang Pao had continued to take over in the Secret War as he was the commander of Military Region 2 and had 22,000 soldiers under him, along with 450,000 citizens. Many of his men were from 10 minority hill tribes and Thai mercenaries fighting on his side. Their main task was to interfere with the Northern's weapon shipments and save American pilots that had been held hostage with the supplied ammunition from the US. Most of their battles were by the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which was a system of trails from the north leading down south and famous for having exported many weapons and troops to the northern soldiers fighting in the south. Throughout his fight, he and his army of guerrillas had destroyed many weapons and troops that were worth billions of dollars, but didn't succeed in stopping communism. By the end, General Vang Pao had lost more than 17,000 men, which was about 10% of the Hmong population, and 3,000 more had scrambled into the woods, unable to be found. Although they were able to cause much damage, they were not able to succeed, and the Laos government was taken over by communism. The CIA had backed out, leaving Vang Pao's people stranded in a war zone. The war had ended in 1975, and the new Laos Communist government, Pathet Lao, had declared genocide on the Hmong villages. This had led many of the Hmong people to leave their homes in Laos and take dangerous routes to Thailand to live in refugee camps. Many of the Hmong leaders or village heads that served a larger part in the war were poisoned and taken out to torture grounds to get killed. General Vang Pao had fled to America along with more than 20,000 Hmong families with him, who did not just run away from Laos but exiled from ever returning.
Thầu cũng về helicopter để lũ rò mông nơi một trong mông cha, cụ tì đã ca xe luôn trong lồng chân, cụ có được một cái sống.
Coming to America, they were not acknowledged or welcomed as soldiers or helpers of the U.S. until 1997. Vang Pao continued to help the Hmong refugees in the United States and also those who were left behind in Thailand. He spoke out towards the unjust forced repatriation taxes on the Hmong in the Thai refugee camps, and even helped found the United Lao National Liberation Front, along with many other fundraisers for the Hmong. Vang Pao and 9 others were arrested on June 4, 2007, after being conspired for sending weapons to the Hmong in Thailand to fight and rebel once more against Pathet Laos. But charges were dropped after all his documents had been properly translated and all the evidence were looked over, pleading him not guilty for treason. He did want to go back to Laos to help the people he had left behind reform a bond with their now communist leaders, but Laos had threatened to execute him if he did. So he and many other Hmong families never got to return to their homes in Laos. The many stories from the Hmong can still be found and are recorded, not just on newspapers or books, but also on the many Hmong story cloths made by many witnesses to remember the tragic war by. Even today, most of the Hmong see General Vang Pao as a very revered figure in the Hmong community. His good nature and smart tactics were able to help his people like he wanted as a child. General Vang Pao took a stand in the Vietnam Secret War by fighting against communism to create a better future for his people, and continued to help them even after he was in the US, as they were refugees from the long war.
And within the last 80 years of his life, look how far we've come. In terms of, this is the first time in the history of our people where we've had equal access to education, we've had equal access to all sorts of opportunities in this country, because he was, in a way you can say, he was that bridge that brought us to America.